I didn't expect this email. It came from a man named Thomas, a retired American who moved to Malaysia for what he thought would be the happiest chapter of his life. The subject line was simple, almost haunting. My wife, my betrayal, my Malaysia story. Inside, Thomas told me he wanted his story to be shared, not for sympathy, but as a warning. He wrote in his own words, raw, unpolished, but filled with the weight of a man whose dreams collapsed overnight. This is Thomas's story. My name is Thomas, and I'm 65 years old. For nearly 4 decades, I worked as an accountant in Chicago. Day in, day out spreadsheets, deadlines, tax, season stress. You name it, I carried it on my shoulders. I used to look out the office window in the dead of winter, watching the snow swallow the city, and promise myself, one day, I'll be free. One day, I'll wake up in the sun instead of scraping ice off my windshield. That day came. After retiring, I sold the family house, packed away the last boxes of my career, and decided to make a bold move. I'd read about Malaysia, how retirees could live comfortably there on a fraction of what it cost in the States, how the MM2H program opened doors for foreigners, and how the beaches of Penang and Langkawi were second to none. Affordable healthcare, low cost of living, tropical sunshine. It sounded like paradise. And I wanted paradise. I wasn't alone in this dream. My wife, Jenny, was by my side. Jenny is my second wife. We met 15 years ago, after my first marriage ended in divorce. She was in her late 30s then, working in a small travel agency, full of energy, full of laughter. I was a middle-aged man who thought his best years were behind him. She made me feel alive again, gave me reasons to smile, reasons to dream. When she agreed to marry me, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. Yes, she was younger. 17 years between us. People raised their eyebrows, whispered that she must be after my money, that I was trying to cling to youth I no longer had. I ignored them. I told myself love doesn't count birthdays, it counts heartbeats. So when I proposed the idea of retiring overseas, Jenny smiled that same playful smile I fell for years ago. Tropical islands instead of Chicago winters? Count me in, she said. I thought we wanted the same life. I thought we were building our golden years together. We landed in Kuala Lumpur on a humid August evening. The air smelled different, thick with spices, rain, and something I can only describe as possibility. I remember looking at Jenny as we wheeled our suitcases through the airport, her hair sticking to her forehead from the heat. She was glowing, excited, snapping photos on her phone. I told myself, we made the right choice. This is where we'll be happy. We rented a small but comfortable condo just outside of Georgetown, Penang. It wasn't fancy, but it had a balcony that overlooked the sea, and every morning I'd sit there with my coffee, watching the sun rise like a promise kept. Jenny loved the night markets, rows of stalls selling sizzling satay, char kway teow, nasi lemak. She was adventurous with food, always pulling me towards something new. Life was slower, cheaper, kinder. We joined an expat group, mostly other Americans, Brits, and Australians who had come here for the same reasons we did. Escape the grind, stretch their pensions, live out their days in the sun. They welcomed us warmly. On Sundays, we'd go for brunch with them, swapping stories of life back home, laughing about the quirks of adapting here. I thought I'd found heaven. For the first time in decades, I wasn't rushing anywhere. No clients, no deadlines, no traffic jams. Just the sound of the waves, the chatter of locals at the market, the clink of beer glasses at expat meetups. I'd walk along Gurney Drive at sunset, holding Jenny's hand, telling her how lucky we were. She'd nod, smile, sometimes rest her head against my shoulder. In those moments, I believed I was exactly where I was meant to be. But looking back now, I realized there were signs, small ones, easy to miss. Jenny was always on her phone. She said she was texting her sister back in the States or scrolling through Facebook. Sometimes she'd excuse herself in the middle of dinner to take a quick call. I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? After all, she left everything behind to come here with me. There were times she seemed restless, though. While I could sit on the balcony for hours watching the waves, Jenny grew fidgety. She wanted to go into town alone, just to explore, she said. Or she'd talk about joining classes, yoga, cooking, even volunteering. I encouraged it. I thought she just needed hobbies, her own identity outside of being my wife. I didn't want to admit it then, but part of me was afraid. Afraid she'd wake up one day and realize I was old, slower, not the man she once fell in love with. But whenever that thought crept into my head, I'd shove it away. Jenny loved me. She chose me. That was enough. I remember one evening in particular. We were at a hawker stall, eating grilled fish with our fingers. Jenny was laughing at something the vendor said, her eyes sparkling. A couple of younger expats passed by and gave us that look, half amusement, half judgment. I felt it burn, but Jenny just kept laughing, as if she didn't notice or didn't care. That night, as I watched her fall asleep beside me, I whispered a quiet thank you to God for giving me a second chance at love. If only I had known. If only I had seen what was coming. At the time, all I saw was the dream, the woman I adored, the life I built, the future I thought was ours. I believe Malaysia was the beginning of our forever. I didn't know it was also where everything would fall apart. At first, I thought our life in Malaysia was perfect. The slower pace, the warm evenings, the endless food stalls. It felt like a reward for all the years I spent grinding away at a desk. But little by little, things started to change. The first shift was subtle. Jenny was restless. Where I found peace in routine, coffee on the balcony at sunrise, walks along the waterfront, afternoons reading novels, she grew fidgety. You're turning into an old man, Tom, she teased once, laughing as she laced her sneakers. I want to explore, not sit around all day. I didn't take offense. She was younger, after all, 17 years younger. I told myself she had more energy, more curiosity. So I encouraged her. Go on, honey. See the sights. Make friends. I thought it was good for her. Soon, she was out more than she was home. First, it was yoga classes at a studio near Gurney Drive. Then cooking lessons. Then shopping trips with the girls. I put the phrase in quotes because, truth be told, I never met any of these so-called friends. Every time I suggested inviting them over, Jenny brushed it off. They're busy, she'd say. Or, they're not really the dinner party type. I'll let slide. I told myself I was being silly. But the unease grew. One evening, I woke up around 2 in the morning. The bed was cold beside me. I found Jenny on the balcony, her face lit by her phone screen. She startled when she saw me. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Yeah, she said quickly, locking the screen. Just texted my sister. Her answer should have comforted me. Instead, it tied a knot in my stomach. The next day, I tried to shake it off. But once you start noticing cracks, you can't unsee them. Jenny's phone was always with her. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down at dinner, silenced the notifications. If I asked who she was talking to, her answers were short. Friends. Family. No one important. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I did. It didn't help when Graham, a British expat with a booming laugh and too many beers in his belly, gave me a warning one afternoon. Careful, Tom. This place is paradise, but paradise has its snakes. I've seen it happen. Younger wives get bored, find themselves a bit of excitement on the side. Locals, other expats, it doesn't matter. Seen more than one man left high and dry. He said it like a joke, but the look in his eyes wasn't. I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. Not long after, Jenny told me she was meeting her yoga group for coffee. I thought I'd surprise her, show up with her favorite iced latte. But when I got to the cafe, she wasn't there. The staff didn't even recognize the name of her group. I stood there like a fool, clutching the sweating plastic cup, pretending it didn't mean anything. When she came home hours later, I didn't ask where she'd been. Instead, I handed her the drink with a smile. Thought of you today. She kissed me on the cheek, thanked me, and sipped it without a trace of guilt. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd just handed a gift to a stranger in her heart. The whispers started then. An expat gathering. I overheard 2 women talking in hushed voices. Jenny always looks so happy with her new friend, one said. They laughed softly. I froze. My drink suddenly tasted bitter. But instead of confronting them, I forced a smile and laughed at a joke someone else made, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. Pretending was easier. Back home, Jenny seemed radiant. She laughed more, talked more, but not to me. Our conversations shrank to the bare minimum. How was your day? I'd ask. Good, she'd reply, her eyes glued to her phone. I tried to win her back. I suggested a trip to Langkawi or maybe Malacca. She shook her head. Too busy. Maybe later. One night, I finally asked, Are you happy here, Jenny? She looked startled, then forced a smile. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? But her eyes told a different story. I should have pressed then, should have demanded the truth. But I didn't. Love makes you blind. Or maybe it makes you a coward. I told myself she was just adjusting. I told myself she still loved me. But deep down I knew the dream I'd built here was starting to crack. And soon, those cracks would split wide open. It was a Tuesday, humid and heavy with the threat of rain. I remember because I planned to meet Graham for lunch at the hawker stalls. Halfway there, I realized I'd left my wallet on the dining table. I cursed, turned the car around, and drove back. That mistake changed everything. Our condo was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Jenny was supposed to be out at her cooking class, but her shoes were by the door. A flicker of unease ran through me. Jenny, I called. No answer. I stepped inside. The living room was empty. My wallet sat on the table where I'd left it. Relief should have come then, but it didn't, because from down the hall I heard it, a sound that froze my blood. Laughter. A man's laugh. Low, confident, followed by a sound I knew too well, Jenny's giggle. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things, that my mind, already poisoned with suspicion, was playing tricks on me. But then came the creak of the bed, the rhythm, the unmistakable murmur of pleasure. My heart slammed against my ribs. The world narrowed to a tunnel. My hands shook as I gripped the doorknob to our bedroom. I pushed it open, and there it was. Jenny, my wife, tangled in sheets with another man. Time slowed. The ceiling fan whirred lazily above them, stirring the humid air. Jenny's hair clung to her flushed face. The man beside her, bare-chested, younger than me by decades, froze mid-motion. Their eyes snapped toward me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Jenny gasped. Tom! I couldn't breathe. My stomach lurched. The room tilted. I stumbled back a step, gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Who the hell is this? I demanded, though my voice cracked, raw and broken. The man swung his legs off the bed, scrambling for his clothes. Hey man, calm down. Don't you dare talk to me, I roared. My throat burned, my chest felt like it was tearing apart. I turned to Jenny. How long? She stared at me, lips parted, eyes wide with guilt. Tom, please, How long? I thundered. Her face crumpled. She buried it in her hands. A few months, she whispered. The words hit harder than any fist. A few months. While I was sipping coffee on the balcony, dreaming of sunsets and forever, she was sneaking this man into our home, into our bed. I felt sick. I wanted to punch the man, to throw him out onto the street. But more than that, I wanted to scream at Jenny, to shake her and demand why. Instead, I stood there hollowed out. After everything, I rasped. I gave up my home, my country, my life for us. And this is what you do. Jenny's eyes brimmed with tears. You don't understand. I felt trapped, Tom. This life, it's your dream, not mine. You're happy sitting on the balcony, but I need more. I need to feel alive. Her words sliced me open. So you felt alive by screwing another man in our bed? She flinched. The man muttered, I should go, and bolted, clothes half-buttoned. The door slammed behind him, leaving us in the suffocating silence of betrayal. I stared at her. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, sat trembling on the edge of our bed. And I realized I didn't know her at all. Tears blurred my vision. Why didn't you just tell me? I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Didn't want to hurt me? Jenny, you've destroyed me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside finally broke, hammering against the windows, drowning out the sound of my ragged breathing. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to slam the door and never look back. But my feet were rooted. My heart, foolish as it was, still ached for her. Jenny reached out, fingers trembling. Tom, I'm sorry. I recoiled. Her touch felt poisonous. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the balcony, watching the storm rage over the sea, replaying the scene in my mind like a nightmare on repeat. Jenny cried herself to sleep in the other room. Every sob was a knife in my chest. By sunrise, one thing was clear. The dream was over. The morning after I caught Jenny with him, the world felt different. The sun still rose, the birds still screeched outside. The smell of fried noodles drifted up from the street below, but everything I'd built, everything I believed in, had collapsed overnight. I sat at the dining table, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. Jenny emerged from the bedroom, her eyes swollen, her hair a mess. She looked fragile, guilty, but in that moment, I couldn't summon sympathy. She opened her mouth. "Tom." I raised a hand. "Don't. Just don't." We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, I spoke, my voice low, dangerous. "Tell me the truth. All of it. No more lies." Jenny twisted her hands together. "It started at the yoga studio. His name is Alex. He was kind to me. He listened. He made me feel alive again." I laughed bitterly. "Alive? You needed him to feel alive." Tears filled her eyes. "You don't understand. You're content here, sitting on the balcony, reading your books, living in your bubble. But I was suffocating. I didn't want this life, Tom. I never did." Her words stung more than the betrayal itself. "You told me you wanted Malaysia. You smiled. You said, 'Count me in.' I said it for you," she admitted, "because it was your dream. And I thought maybe if I came, I'd learn to love it too. But I didn't. I felt lost, invisible, like I'd thrown away my own life to sit in your shadow." I stared at her, rage and sorrow twisting inside me. "So, instead of talking to me, instead of giving me a chance to fix things, you crawled into bed with a stranger?" Her voice cracked. "It wasn't just sex. You made me feel wanted." That line broke me. I slammed my fist on the table so hard the cup rattled. "Wanted? I gave you everything. My savings, my trust, my heart. And it wasn't enough." Jenny flinched, but she didn't deny it. For the rest of that day, we barely spoke. She stayed in the bedroom. I sat outside, staring at the ocean, wondering when my life had turned into a cruel joke. The following days blurred together. We argued, then fell silent, then argued again. Sometimes she begged for forgiveness. Other times, she turned cold, defensive, blaming me for dragging her here, for making her feel trapped. "Don't you dare put this on me," I snapped once. "You had choices. You always had choices. And so did you," she shot back. "You chose a life I never wanted." Her words echoed in my head at night. Had I been selfish? Blind? Maybe. But nothing excused what she did. Nothing excused the humiliation of hearing neighbors whisper, of catching pitying glances from the expat crowd who now knew my wife had been unfaithful. The gossip spread faster than the monsoon rains. One evening at the cafe, a fellow American leaned in and muttered, "Heard about Jenny. Sorry, man." I wanted to punch him. Instead, I left without finishing my drink. I became a ghost in my own community. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. Some sympathetic, others amused. I hated them all. At home, Jenny grew distant. Sometimes she slept in the guest room. Other nights, she didn't come home at all. When I confronted her, she said she needed space. "I don't know what I want, Tom," she admitted one night, her voice weary. "Part of me feels guilty, but another part of me feels free." That cut deeper than any blade. Free. She felt free betraying me. I started questioning everything. The 15 years we'd spent together, were they all a lie? Did she ever love me? Or was I just a stepping stone, a meal ticket, a safe harbor until something better came along? I replayed memories of us. Our first trip to New Orleans, the time we danced in the kitchen, the nights we whispered dreams in the dark. Were those moments real? Or were they illusions I forced myself to believe in? The worst part wasn't the anger. It was the emptiness. The sense that the woman I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by a stranger who no longer cared if she shattered me. One night, as rain lashed against the windows, Jenny stood in the doorway with a suitcase. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a while," she said softly. I didn't ask which friend. I already knew. I nodded numb. "Go." She hesitated, maybe expecting me to beg her to stay. But I didn't. I couldn't. Watching her leave, suitcase wheels clicking against the tile, felt like watching my soul being dragged out of the room. When the door closed behind her, silence swallowed me whole. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, sat on the balcony, and stared at the black ocean. For the first time since arriving in Malaysia, I hated this place. The palm trees, the salty air, the lights of fishing boats on the horizon. They mocked me. This wasn't paradise. This was hell, and I was alone in it. The days after Jenny left blurred into a hollow routine. I woke up alone, made coffee for one, stared at the empty chair across from me. Every corner of the apartment carried her shadow, the scarf she'd left on the sofa, the scent of her perfume lingering in the bedroom, the half-used bottle of shampoo mocking me in the shower. I tried to pretend I was fine. I went for walks along the waterfront, ate lunch at the hawker stalls, even forced a smile when neighbors waved. But inside, I was crumbling. The paradise I once praised now felt like a cage. The worst was the loneliness. Back in the States, I had brothers, old friends, people who knew me. Here, I was just another foreigner, a retiree who thought he could outrun aging and disappointment by flying across the world. But when betrayal struck, I realized how isolated I truly was. Jenny had always been the social one. She chatted with the market vendors, made friends at yoga, joined book clubs. Without her, I had no connections. And now, those very connections whispered behind my back. One evening, I overheard two women at the cafe. Poor man. His wife ran off. With that younger guy, right? I heard she moved in with him. Their voices stung like knives. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to say I wasn't the fool they thought I was. But I stayed silent, swallowed the shame. Then came the practical problems. Jenny and I had bought the condo together. Our funds were tied, accounts shared. The lawyer explained that in Malaysia, things could get messy if one spouse contested ownership. Divorce will complicate your MM2H visa, he added, almost casually. The words hit me like a freight train. Divorce wasn't just emotional. It could mean losing my right to stay in the country, the home I'd built here, the little stability I had left. At night, I lay awake, doing the math. If Jenny fought me, if she demanded her share, I could lose everything. I pictured her, lying beside that man, whispering promises of a future he didn't earn, a future funded by the very savings I'd worked for. The bitterness boiled inside me. Some nights, I drowned in whiskey. Others, I wrote long letters I never sent, letters cursing her, pleading with her, remembering her. I tore them up each morning, ashamed of how pathetic I sounded. One afternoon, Jenny showed up unannounced. She looked radiant, healthier somehow, her hair tied back, her skin glowing as if betrayal had rejuvenated her. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside like she still owned the place. I folded my arms. "Talk then." She sighed. "I don't want a war, Tom. We can handle this like adults. Split the assets fairly. Go our separate ways." "Fairly," I scoffed. "After what you've done, you think you deserve fairness?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't punish me just to punish yourself. You know the law. You know your visa depends on stability. If you drag this out, you could lose more than me." Her calmness infuriated me. She spoke like a lawyer, not a wife. Not a woman who had shared my bed, whispered love in my ear. "Get out," I muttered. "Just get out." She left without argument. That was the moment I realized she had already detached from me completely. I was no longer her husband. I was just an obstacle to her new life. The following weeks were hell. My phone buzzed with messages from lawyers, reminders of meetings, updates on paperwork. I walked through the condo like a tenant waiting to be evicted. One night, I met an older British man at a bar. He'd been through the same thing. Came here with his wife, only for her to run off with someone else. He chuckled bitterly, raising his glass. "Welcome to the club, mate. Paradise has sharp teeth." His words stuck with me. Maybe Malaysia wasn't to blame. Maybe betrayal was universal, something that could happen anywhere. But it didn't make it easier. The real breaking point came when I spotted Jenny and Alex together in public. They were walking through the mall, hand in hand, laughing like teenagers. She looked at him the way she used to look at me. Eyes bright, lips curved, body leaning in as if he were her entire world. I froze, every muscle tense, rage pounding in my chest. She saw me. For a second, her smile faltered. Then she turned away, pulling him closer, as if to say, "He's mine now. You're nothing." I walked out before I did something stupid. But inside, I knew I couldn't stay here. Not like this. Not in a place where her ghost haunted every street, every cafe, every sunset. Yet leaving meant admitting defeat. It meant returning to the States with nothing but humiliation, whispers of poor Thomas following me wherever I went. I stood on the balcony that night, staring at the dark sea. I asked myself, is this the end of my dream? Or just the beginning of something else? The truth was, I didn't know. All I knew was that Malaysia, the paradise I once praised, had become a battlefield, and I was losing. The night I saw Jenny with him was the lowest point of my life. I came home, shut the curtains, and sat in the dark. I wanted to disappear, but somewhere between the third and fourth whiskey, a thought came to me. She doesn't get to end my story. For months, I've been living in reaction to her betrayal, her choices, her absence, her cruelty. My life had become defined by what she did to me, and I hated it. I hated giving her that power. The next morning, I woke early. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and stared at the sunrise. The world hadn't ended. Not yet. I pulled out a notebook and wrote one sentence. What do I want now? The answer didn't come quickly, but over the next weeks, I forced myself into motion. I signed up for a language class, something I'd always meant to do but never bothered with. I joined a photography group, started walking the streets of Georgetown with a camera, capturing colors and faces and moments that had nothing to do with Jenny. It wasn't easy. Some mornings I still woke up bitter, replaying the betrayal like a broken record. But when I focused my lens on something outside myself, the wrinkled smile of a street vendor, the gleam of lanterns at night, I felt a shift. Slowly, I began to reclaim Malaysia for myself. The legal battle dragged on, but I approached it differently. Instead of rage, I treated it like paperwork, a necessary step toward closure. My lawyer was blunt. You can keep the condo, but she'll demand her share of the savings. Fine, let her have the money. Money could be earned, rebuilt. Peace of mind was priceless. The expat community, once a source of humiliation, became something else. I started speaking honestly. When someone asked, "How are you holding up?" I didn't hide. I told them, "It's hell, but I'm still standing." To my surprise, people respected that. Some even opened up about their own losses, divorces, affairs, broken dreams. I realized betrayal wasn't unique to me. It was part of the human condition. One evening, at a poetry reading in Penang, I met a man who had been widowed young. He said something that stuck with me. Grief is just love with nowhere to go. The trick is to redirect it. Redirect it. Those words echoed in me. I stopped writing letters to Jenny and started writing to myself. Journals filled with reflections, lessons, even gratitude. Gratitude that I had survived, that I had the courage to start over, that I still had breath in my lungs and a whole country to explore. Sometimes I wondered about Jenny, whether she was happy with Alex, whether their love would last or crumble like ours. But each time I caught myself drifting into those thoughts, I pulled back. Her story was hers. Mine was mine. Months later, I stood on the same balcony where I once cursed the ocean, watching the fishing boats glow against the horizon. But this time, the view felt different. It wasn't mocking me. It was inviting me. I realized then that Malaysia didn't betray me. Jenny did. The country was just the stage. The tragedy was hers to own. So I made a choice. I would stay. Not for her, not for the dream we once shared, but for me. I booked a trip to Sabah to hike Mount Kinabalu. I volunteered at a shelter teaching English to kids. I filled my days with new experiences, new people, new stories. Did I still hurt? Of course. Some nights, loneliness curled around me like smoke. Some mornings, I reached across the bed, forgetting she was gone. But the pain no longer defined me. It was just part of me like a scar. I don't know if I'll ever fall in love again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I know this, I'm not done living. Jenny thought she was my ending, but she was only a chapter. And as I write this now, from a cafe in Penang, the ceiling fans humming, the smell of curry noodles in the air, I feel something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Because even in the ruins of betrayal, life has a way of blooming again. This is my new beginning. Thomas calls this his new beginning. But what about you? If you were in his place, what choice would you make? Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.